Okay, so I will be doing a short presentation on the Battle of the Atlantic Ocean during the Second World War and the German decryption and encryption machine called Enigma. The agenda is, firstly, I will start with a short introduction. I will explain what the Battle of the Atlantic Ocean was during the Second World War. I will explain what encryption is, very basically, and I will analyze the German encryption machine called the Enigma machine. Then I will start discussing the significance of the decryption of this machine and how it actually impacted the Second World War. And lastly, I will summarize and do a little recap and a conclusion. So, first, an introduction. You can kind of say that mankind has always wanted to keep its secrets, even more so. It has wanted to know other people's secrets, especially when we talk about war or warfare or things like that, because you always want to know what the enemy is up to. And we've always gone to great lengths to try to keep these secrets. For example, encryption, or just by killing informants and stuff like that. And I will go more into detail in that in a minute. So firstly, the Battle of the Atlantic Ocean. What was it? How was it? The Atlantic Ocean, obviously very vast. There's a lot of key routes in it. It's mostly used for transporting goods and resources from allies to Great Britain, for example. However, the Germans had employed a lot of submarines or U-boats that would terrorize the sea and really make it hard for the allies. Germans were actually really good at this and had like a lot of success in their campaign against British transporters. It all actually started when a German submarine accidentally hit just a passenger ship, a British one, and that literally kickstarted the whole thing. And the German Navy wasn't that good, so they really needed to boost it up with their submarines, and that's what they did. However, at one point during the war, when France surrendered, then the Germans got a lot more submarines added to their navy, which then gave them a lot more firepower. Plus, the Allied navy really fell down because of all the ships that France had were now German. Now that Germany also had the French coast to easily access the Atlantic, it really gave them the upper hand, and it actually got really bad. So bad, in fact, that in 1942, like the average monthly loss for the British was around 650,000 tons of goods a month. However, already in the 1940s, the Brits actually got their hands on they sunk a U-boat and actually got their hands on an Enigma machine from the time and a few documents. And in 1942, they also got their hands on even more documents, which in turn would help them get a better understanding of this machine. So basically, the whole of the Atlantic battle was that it was the trade routes for Britain, for their supplies and resources and all that, and the Germans really were nagging them, so they obviously wanted to keep this area clear and make sure that they got the supplies that they needed. Now I can start going into a little bit about encryption. First of all, we have something called monoalphabetic encryption. You just use one alphabet in the word mono. This is actually what Julius Caesar used back in the day. So it's basically you have an alphabet, another alphabet, and you kind of just move it a bit. You could, for example, say like you have a normal alphabet, and then the encryption alphabet just moves it one bit, so A becomes B, and then when you translate and stuff like that. Obviously, it's very easy to crack, and there are very few combinations, not that many, because you can only move the letter or the key alphabet, encryption alphabet, one at a time. So there's like 26 different possibilities. And also another not so good thing about the monoalphabetic one is like you need to decrypt the messages. You need like the whole new alphabet and which order it is. It can be really hard to remember. You have to write it down, and people can obviously get their hands on that, and then your encryption is basically useless. Then there's something called alphabetical encryption, which, as that states, use multiple alphabets. It was invented in the 1500s by a Frenchman, and you basically just need a simple keyword to decrypt it. And unless you know the keyword or the length of this keyword, it's very hard to break. So if you just keep that keyword secret, then it's basically unbreakable, and you can keep your messages a secret from anyone who's tried to read, because it's just going to be gibberish unless you know the key. And this is basically what the Enigma machine tries to do. In its very most basic form, it consists of 3 parts. So we have a keyboard where you type in the message. We have something called a scrambler or a scrambler wheel, also called, that encrypts each letter, and then you get a display. So it kind of shows. So if I type in B, then the display will show D, for example, and that's what it's been encrypted to. And that happens when this scrambler, which is like a little wheel, starts off like this, and you type a letter, and every time you type a letter, it turns a little bit, so the next time it actually decrypts as a new one with like a new alphabet, like the poly alphabetical. If you only have one wheel though, then when you've typed 26 times, it will have turned all the way around, and then the encryption will be the same as before. So that's not that effective. That's why they made it with 3 different scramblers. And when you had that, you had like 17,500 different encryption alphabets. However, that could be quite easily checked by a team of 12 people or so in a day. So that wasn't that effective. So what they also did was they had put in this reflector, which basically sends the letter through an encryption, comes down, and sends it through another set of encryption, and then it comes out. That doesn't really add new possibilities. However, it does allow whoever gets the encrypted message to figure out what the original message was, because it just sends it back the other way when you type that letter in. So what the Germans did actually was that they made these scrambler wheels interchangeable, so you could just take them out whenever you wanted to and change them, and they would use 5 different ones. They would choose from 5 different ones a day, and this in turn gives an insane amount of possibilities that you wouldn't be able to check through it. Actually, if you do that with 5 different wheels and the other things that it had, you would come up to around 160 quintillion different possibilities, which, if someone checked that, a new combination every second, like for 24 hours a day, it would still take them 13.8 billion years to check all of them. So, it would literally be impossible to crack. And that's at least what they say. But they actually did end up cracking it, obviously because they got all these code files and stuff like that, and they would look at a key phrase in the thing, so that because they changed it every single day, and they only had one day to check through all these quintillion possibilities, which was impossible. So they looked at a key phrase, because every message the Germans sent would always end in a Heil Hitler, so that they knew would always be the same, so then they could check it, and then in the end they actually did crack it. So you could say, how significant was this cracking of the Enigma machine? Was it actually what won the war, or could it, was it basically it wasn't that significant at all? Obviously, there's a lot of different reasons for the Allies winning in the Atlantic Ocean. For example, the fact that the USA joined the war, and we also had the Allied invasion of North Africa, which really took the German troops or navy from the Atlantic down to the Mediterranean Sea, and they had to do it there. But obviously that still doesn't make it insignificant. It's still a very significant way, because obviously information is key when it comes to war, and because they had cracked this thing, they always knew what the enemy tactic would be. So in that sense, they could all work their way around that. If you look at the numbers of ships sank, it always it dipped as soon as the Allies cracked the machine. And then you could say what had happened if they hadn't cracked the machine, like the Enigma machine. Many historians say that Germany would have lost anyway, because they had so many different factors. Like they were being pressured from the east by the Soviet Union, they were being pressured by the west by the Allies. But obviously, the cracking of this Enigma machine really helped facilitate and really speed up a lot of processes. For example, D-Day would probably not have been the invasion of Normandy wouldn't have been come at the time it did, or it might even have been not happen at all, because if they hadn't cracked the code, they wouldn't have been able to get as many resources there. The soldiers would have been starved and all that. So that really helped speed up the process. And then in turn, you could say that would have actually shortened the war, basically. If they hadn't cracked it, it would have gone on for way longer. A lot of more people would have lost their lives. But cracking that and actually knowing what the Germans' tactic was obviously helped shorten the war, and then that in turn saved a lot of lives. So it was not insignificant. So basically to sum up, we have this huge battle in the Atlantic that was vital for the British, because that's where all their resources came from. All their supplies and stuff from America, for example, came through the Atlantic. So it was very important for them to know, okay, what was the Germans' tactic in these waters? Obviously, that wasn't the factor that tipped the war over, and then that's the reason they won. But that doesn't mean it wasn't significant at all. Because obviously it did help shorten the war and save tons of lives. So in conclusion, it wasn't vital for the World War II as a whole, but it was still significant in the sense that it saved a lot of lives. Yes.